If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews, it's your number one source. Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 325 of Sports Card Nation, and that's still always crazy to think over 300 episodes, only one time a week, just how long we've been doing the show. But we're lasted this long because of you out there. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that and all the downloads and people giving their time. Speaking of people giving their time, that's exactly what our guest today does. And for the benefit of his fellow humanity, and his name is Greg Poole. He's in charge of Can Ministries, and they do a lot of great things for people in need. They have a non-for-profit hobby shop that gives back not only to the hobby community, but the community as a whole, with school supplies, cards, just across the board. And should have had him on sooner, but we're going to talk about what he does and how important it is, why he does it, and all that great stuff. And if you're listening and you want to give a hand to this organization, I'll put that information in the show notes, how to get a hold of them. But any little thing helps, right? Whether it be a financial donation, supplies, cards, whatever, school supplies, whatever the case may be. They're operating in southern Illinois, but doesn't matter. They take shipments in from wherever they may come. So I want to talk to Greg here shortly and learn about how it started, where he's at, and where they want to go. So quick commercial break, and we'll be back with Greg Poole.
Iron Sports Cards is your number one source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Really glad to conversate with the next guest I have on the Sports Card Shop one-on-one guest line, and he comes out of Illinois, and his name is Greg Poole, and he's the CEO in charge of Can Ministries, doing great things for people, 501(c) organization. I want to talk all about that, but with a hobby background and a hobby-based, 100% of the sales go to the organization as well. And should have had him on sooner, but better late than never. Mr. Greg Poole, welcome to Sports Card Nation.
Thank you for having me, and happy to be here.
All right, well, let's start with, before we get into Can, which is doing yeoman's work, and before we get into all that, let's kind of, for you, you're in the hobby. That's a big part of what you do with Can. When did the hobby start for you? Kind of take us back. I know it's the kind of the standard podcast question, but we kind of always use that.
Yeah, so I have been in the hobby since I could talk, basically. So I was blessed with a large family, a lot of cousins, different ages, a lot older than me, some older than me, and so they were into the hobby. into sports. And so really it was kind of a natural transition. And so when you start talking about when you collected, kind of makes you feel older. And so, so really like 88 Donruss, I can remember 88 being that first pack I was asking for at the store. I thought the BJ Surhoffs of the world and the Greg Jeffries were going to make me very rich, and they did not. But yeah, so really young age. So like I said, children of the junk wax era. That was me. And so, like I said, from there, just really use that to really build my community. And then, as you get into school, all your friends are into sports and they're into cards. And so I will say that unlike most people that I hear, I really never took that break. So really just from grade school on, stayed with it. Like I said, didn't take a break. Luckily, my wife, I met her in between all of that and still married me. So yeah, so really, I'm 40, you'd be 41. So really 35, 36 years of collecting, accumulating, and now doing different things with it.
Yeah, we have a few similarities. I too really didn't take a break like sometimes you hear, and I'm a big Greg Jeffries guy, even to this day, as crazy as that sound. And like you, I've got three I joke it's not really a joke, but I joke about it. In my garage, there's 3 binders full of just Greg Jeffrey rookie cards. I'm a Mets guy, and back then he was the next biggest thing, and just acquired as many Greg Jeffries
They had some good years in St. Louis too.
Yeah, he did. Then he kind of Philadelphia, Kansas City, some injuries, knee injuries caught up with him. I joke with people, if you look at his numbers, they're actually like his final numbers. They're probably better than people give him credit for. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination, but he had a better career than many people kind of think of. But he was so hyped, Greg, that it was hard. It was going to be hard to live up to that billing. So I hearing you talk about Jeffries brings up good and bad memories, mostly good. But that was that era, right? 88, 89 was his first years in rookie cards, and it was a fun chase. And even as sometimes I'll open some old wax and still pull one, and it's not exactly the same feeling, but it's still nostalgic and brings you back. Like you said, to younger years. And I'm a little bit older than you. But I'm 11 years older than you, but just the same, right? But that nostalgia. So, I heard you on another program talking about mental health. That's an important subject with me. I'm a teaching assistant in special education at the high school level. So mental health is obviously very important and a big thing. I know you had some struggles. Glad to see you where we can still talk to you. And how much did that play into being philanthropic and what you do today?
So for me, it's a gigantic part of what we do. We're not always very vocal about it, but that's always the drive, and still to this day, that's the drive. And as we learn, being a male-dominated hobby, that's not really a popular topic to talk about amongst men. So one of the things that we have learned over the years, just to be more open with our story. And, as we do more podcasts and as we, really grow as an organization, get a lot of messages from guys that just says, thank you for sharing, this happened to me, I struggle with this. And so it plays multiple angles into what we do. I really struggled. I had a lot of trauma as a youth. And so really from an early age, again, when you don't know what you're struggling with, but looking back, I had some trauma-based mental health issues, really didn't know what to do with them. And so tried suicide. Just, like I said, that's something I've just learned to be open with. didn't happen, obviously. And so really that's where the hobby kind of played into it. And so the last thing that I was going to do is I had cards everywhere. And so I always laughed. My mom said, they were always all over my room, all over the house. And so one of the things that I wanted to, before I tried what I tried, was to really kind of dual purpose. I wanted to rid her of the burden, I thought, of having stuff everywhere. And then I wanted to do something good with that stuff. As a 15, 16-year-old, you don't have a whole lot of money. And so what I did, I boxed up a lot of what I had. I went to a card shop, local card shop, went to some friends, and I sold. I sold quite a bit of what I had. So in high school, I was a part of a Meals on Wheels route, and I really just bought food for those people that we had been serving. I had dropped off to their house, said my goodbyes to them. And, like I said, what I planned didn't happen. But after that, I got back in my truck and I just looked at all these monster boxes and I thought, well, I'm here for something. And so really from 16 on, like I said, it's becoming further and further in the past. But, for the past 25, 30 years, you've really used the hobby then to make others' lives better, or try to.
Well, you're doing it. I'm glad, you're still here. And, hearing you talk about that, I know this can be deep stuff, maybe a little more deeper stuff than people, what they would normally hear, but it's important too, Greg. I know you agree with me with that. And mental health is not a male or a female thing, a black and white only thing. It affects everybody of all ages. It's not even an age thing. It's not only when we're in our teens. Adults struggle with this as well, and it knows no boundaries as far as, again, race, creed, national origin, where you're from. It doesn't matter. And so I think it's important, and the fact that I think you're so open about it, I think is there's a lesson to be learned in there, right? That's what I know sometimes it's easier said than done, right? But sometimes talking about it is half the battle, right? Sometimes that's what we need. And so for anyone out there that maybe is listening, that whether they've struggled with it in the past, whether they're struggling with that currently, right? Try to talk to somebody. I think, even going back, 25 years, like you said, with your story, I think it's more, people are more open and accepting of it now than then. We still got a ways to go. We're not at, where we exactly need, but it's a different time now than even then. So people there's more awareness of it. There's more people involved in helping. So if you're suffering from that, I think you have more resources today, let's say, than you had 25 years ago. I think people are more understanding about it, where back then maybe it was more taboo, or, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing, we all have mental different, it's just to what degrees. And so I think go ahead.
Oh, no. And I was going to say, honestly, the best thing somebody ever said to was, they said, I would rather listen to your phone call than it.
Yeah, no doubt. And sometimes that's all it is a conversation that can make the difference. Even if it's, sometimes that conversation may be with somebody else, that conversation may be with yourself. And it almost sounded for you, it was more internal. Like, I do have a reason to stick around. I got things like, there's, I have a purpose here. You mentioned looking at those monster boxes, but even hearing you talk about the day, like kind of when you said your goodbyes, you were still even thinking about other people even in that moment, which is different.
Yeah,
I don't want to say different, but I think it says a lot about you that even when you were contemplating this, you were still thinking about others, and and that sort of thing. And it's, again, for anyone out there, there's hotlines. There's got to be, hopefully there's a family member, and that's the other thing. Even if it's not a family, a friend, somebody, an outreach program, there's somebody. There's more resources in 2025 than in 2000 and earlier, and I think that's getting better each year as we go on. And I even tell my kids at high school, I'm not your dad. I'm just a teaching assistant, but for me, I spend 7-8 hours a day with these young men and women, and sometimes that's more than their own families. And so I hear stuff they value and respect me enough to maybe tell me some things going on in their lives, and that's the other thing. Even if you're not suffering from mental illness, but you can make a difference, in someone who is, by just sometimes being an ear, or some guidance, or help, and doing something for somebody. And so again, I know we're getting a little deep, and but it's important. It's important,
absolutely.
and and I don't care whether you collect cards or you don't collect cards. People who collect cards, people who don't. Again, there's no boundaries where mental health doesn't affect somebody. So I'll my cell phone number is out there publicly. Again, I'm not a licensed. I'm a licensed teaching, but but my phone number is always open. My phone line's always open. If you need an ear, and I know you're kind of so. We'll bring it full circle there. But again, glad you're doing well, and in turn, your purpose, you're doing a lot of beautiful things for other people.
Time to hear from one of our great sponsors, but Sports Card Nation will be right back after that.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Let's go! You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast.
Going back to the cards, though, and we'll get into Can. I know you. I heard you say it's hard to the PC stuff in what you're doing with the ministry, but I mean, what is there stuff like, hey, when you get you tend to keep it, or you try to?
So I've always said that everything that I own is a price on. Now there are things that I do, I guess, at home. Most of what I PC or what I deem collectible doesn't really have much of a monetary value. So at the shop, we do have a little display where we at least one card from every school in our area that we've served. So, for example, Doug Collins is from my hometown. We have cards of Doug. Jerry Salone's from pretty close to us. So there's those things that we do keep. Now, like I said, from my childhood or players that I liked. So you may have 3 binders of Greg Jeffries, but I've got several monster boxes of Greg Olson. Greg Olson was my jam. I guess I PC Greg Olson. However, if somebody else likes Greg Olson more than I do, it's for sale for the ministry. But so guys like Greg Olson, Willie McGee was a hero when I was growing up. So in a way, I guess, yeah, I do PC things, but if somebody came along with the right offer and we had a need, I would.
Yeah, no doubt. What I always tell people too, Greg, with stuff you have a personal attachment to, these are guys you idolized or rooted for. The value is in your heart rather than in a price guide, and that's what makes the hobby fun. It doesn't have to be always dollars and cents. I know you've done, Cans is not necessarily new. I know you have a storefront which you opened you tried to open right just before COVID hit, and that kind of cramped your stuff. But kind of talk about, even before the store, when did cards become like a part of giving back? When did you incorporate that as part of helping others?
Yeah, so for us, cards has always been it's basically our funding model. And my daughter, who's getting into the car with me right now.
Yeah.
She says we have a terrible business model, but about 80% of the funding we have for our shop comes from, or I'm sorry, from our shop comes from our for our nonprofit comes from our shop in the hobby. And so if we don't sell it, we do give it away. So we're really into like the millions in terms of things that we have given away. So it actually plays a gigantic huge portion of what we do on our nonprofit.
So how many years before we get into like the actual storefront? Like, so when would you say kind of cans kind of started? When was it?
So we have been operating in some capacity now for 25 years. The storefront came along much later, but along the way, we've kind of operated under an umbrella of other nonprofits. And really, so 5 years the shop has been open. We signed the lease on our building right before COVID, which is a gigantically scary thing that we signed the lease on our shop. And then I'll never forget, like 3 weeks later, our governor came over and said that they were going to shut down all non-essential. So 25 years. So long story short answer, 25 years in some capacity.
Yeah, and as we all know, right, COVID, while not a good time for the world, the nation, a worldwide epidemic. Hobby wise, it's crazy to say. For the hobby, the hobby boomed because of it. People had more downtime, home time, more tabs open on their computer. I heard on another show you talk about stuff that would never. And I can attest to this as a show dealer and an online dealer. Stuff that would not have sold prior. Things were selling. I called it the Midas touch, and anything you touch could turn into a profit. You didn't necessarily have to be the smartest person or in the world. It was just a time period where the hobby blew up. A lot of people came back due to the nostalgia factor and like, hey, cards are still a thing. And so while it was a bad time for people in general, hobby wise, it was the opposite effect, and it was weird to think that. I even just wrote an article about this for Sports Illustrated. As a dealer, I sort of felt guilty because here it's a bad time, and yet as a dealer, it was a good time, a great time in that respect. I hate to say it like this, almost like survivor's guilt. Like, hey, but I'm also philanthropic, so I do things and donate it to various charities. So it wasn't like I was just riding off in the sunset. But like for the ministry and for what you were doing, compare that time to now, where obviously COVID still exists, but not in the same levels as the pandemic. Kind of talk about during COVID. And even now with what you're doing, with the charitable service.
So COVID initially was incredibly scary for us because with so much of our funding model based on our sales, we may have not seen, and I certainly didn't realize there would be the boom that there was. And so we initially saw the boom, and we serve a lot of senior citizens in our area. And so just even with that, the seniors that couldn't get out, like our requests, I should say, grew exponentially, like almost immediately. And so there was that temporary pause where you're thinking, holy cow, how are we going to survive this? Because you kind of push all of your chips into having a physical location that really can't be open. And so, so initially it was really, there was a big uncertainty of what that would look like. But you mentioned shows like eBay opened up windows that we never thought would be opened. And there were things that we put online that honestly we would anticipate. The best example, and I've mentioned it over and over again, we had a Russell Wilson Prism rookie card, and it, bought it for $3. I tried to sell it for $6, couldn't sell it, found it in a box, put it on eBay, and it sold for $1,000. And you kind of laugh at that survivor's guilt. There was part of me going, this person will probably never ever see their investment returned on that. But in the same way, $1,000 paid for weeks of food for our senior citizens. And so once COVID really got rolling and all these people started coming back to the hobby, it definitely evened the playing field for us. We have seen the tail off like any shop owner would. You can't get COVID prices anymore, but I definitely think, in 2025, the hobby's in a better place it was pre-COVID. Like I said, if you're still anticipating those higher prices, if you're camping out at Walmart trying to flip retail, maybe you're not making what you were, but I think times are definitely better than they were pre-COVID.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the hobby's stronger. I think some people who kind of came in just to make the quick flip, maybe they're no longer in the hobby, and it is what it is. But I think what you just said is right on, Greg. Like the people who are here and who have stayed really do have a passion for the hobby. It's not just dollar signs only, so that's a good thing. So you mentioned about you had the lease all set up, ready to open. COVID hits, and that threw a monkey wrench in the thing. I guess how did that go? Did the person leasing the real estate, did they work with you? Kind of how did you get through that? Year and a half, 2 years.
So fortunately for us, we ended up being deemed an essential service because inside of our shop we have what we call the resource center, where we have we carry things for social workers, foster families, and so we actually were deemed an essential service. So we technically couldn't have the card shop open, but we were able to move most of that online. So it worked out really well, and the gentleman that we lease our building from is actually very understanding with what we do and how we do it. And so there were a few months where he just said, you know what, let's just carry it over till next month. And then really several months later, he's like, let's just not even worry about the previous however many months. So we really were blessed with a landlord that really understood both what COVID presented to us and what we were doing. And so he ate a lot of rent in our favor. And so it ended up working out as well as could be expected with kind of what was going on and how it was going on. So once the COVID restrictions were lifted, everything kind of just worked itself out. But, just like any other business that was open, it was a struggle at times. But like I said, everything kind of really came together as well as it could have for.
And, I was hoping that's what you said. It's good to hear that your landlord was a very understanding and in a way, philanthropic in nature himself to do that and get you through some tougher months. And, obviously being a 501(c) sort of makes sense. And, but, he didn't, like, I think you agree, he didn't have to necessarily do that, but wanted to do that and get you through it. And here you are. And it's also like, that's the one thing I wanted to point out too, which I already knew that about what you do, Greg, is it's not just cards. You have other stuff available for different, so like you said, social workers, teaching, the elderly, necessities for all those folks that kind of come in and take care of their needs. The cards are just another aspect of that. Once kind of the restrictions were sort of lifted, and then you could really do the cards at the at your storefront itself. Was it a slow build? Kind of speak to in comparison to with the other stuff which you could have available as a necessity. Kind of talk about once the restrictions were lifted.
Yeah, so it was kind of a slow build, and so honestly, what we always encourage people to do is just to come into our shop, because what we do and how we do it doesn't necessarily make sense to a lot of people. And so even our name kind of isn't real. It's not great branding. And so it was a slow build. And so what we were blessed about having is really right about after COVID, we were on a couple of television shows. We were on the Card Life. We had like Ryan Fagan, who was with the Sporting News at the time, came down and wrote an article on us. And so we were really lucky to have some wonderful press that kind of pushed people in our area towards us. And so we had been doing what we'd been doing long enough. So people in the area knew we'd been doing shows and things. So we did have some local traffic. Some of the press, though, pushed people in from the Metro St. Louis area. So we definitely had a little bit of a lull, but it wasn't, I don't think, as much as maybe your typical new business.
Yeah, and it's nice that people kind of, gave you some pub and got the word out there. That stuff, as you well know, is very important. Thanks to Greg Poole for coming on. Check out Can Ministry, what they're doing. If you can help, by all means, like I said, any little thing, $1 to a donation, supplies, extra stuff, cards you don't want, they can sell in their non-for-profit card store. It's the only non-for-profit 100% card store I'm aware of. And if you didn't get enough of Greg, he will be back next week for the part 2 of our conversation. And glad to have him on. Glad to hopefully maybe do something and collaborate together to get something going. So check them out. Look in the episode notes for how to see what they're doing, or get a hold of them, or contact them. And there you go.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Hey there, this is John Keating from That 70s Card Show with a friendly reminder that the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Hi, I'm Isaac Alpert, a longtime card collector and the co-founder of the Penny Sleever. My wife and I started the Penny Sleever with a simple premise in mind: to offer collectors top quality supplies at fair prices. We offer a full range of hobby supplies and we'll get them to you fast. Whether you're looking for a 260-point magnetic for that oversized patch card, or a slew of semi-rigids for your next PSA submission, the Penny Sleever has you covered. Shop now at thepennysleever.com and use the promo code SCNation to get 10% off your first order. That's SCNation for 10% off at thepennysleever.com. The Penny Sleever. Top quality supplies, fair prices.